Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is episode 111 of the Meet the Farmers podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Eagle. On the show today, I'm thrilled to be joined by the man behind last year's greatest online agricultural show, which was a huge success at the time when all the usual agricultural shows had been cancelled. David Hill is an estate manager based in Berkshire and managing the 5,000-acre Ealing estate, which is just north of Newbury. David, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a bit of a strange time, and I know that you've had a particularly difficult time personally these last few months as well. So really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Tell us about the Ealing estate first of all. So land use is mixed, including arable and woodland, and there's a large property portfolio, which I'm guessing all takes up quite a lot of your time.
Yeah, it does. Well, I look after three estates, Ealing being the bigger one. I spend the bulk of my time there, but we're about 5,000 acres, which is roughly split sort of 5 ways between 4 different farm tenancies. Everything's let. And some forestry, which is in hand. And we've got 4 predominantly arable businesses, 3 predominantly arable businesses and 1 organic dairy farm. Which is sort of gives a good mix to the estate, and then say about 1,100 acres of forestry,
Wow.
which keeps us out of mischief.
And you've been managing the estate since 2018. It's been a good experience so far.
Fantastic, really interesting.
I mean, you do sort of have to say that, but
that's awful. No, I've got it's a lovely place. It's really interesting property. The tenant farmers are all really nice folk, which makes life a lot easier. And our clients, the owners, the trustees rather, are fantastic, and they give me pretty much free rein to do what I think I need to do, and they just sort of rein me in from time to time when I go a bit overboard with silly ideas. But so it's fantastic. Just really sort of stretch my wings a little bit and explore what you want to do management wise and shape a bit of the countryside.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, you're also managing. It's not the only place you're managing.
No, I look after 2 smaller estates. One is sort of really just a house and some fishing on the River Kennet, and another estate actually next door to that one, which was owned by Sir Terence Conran, who sadly passed away last year. So very different in so much as they're sort of private owners who have ownership for very different reasons, and really a home. So it's a good mix, and it helps me to sort of make sure that I'm thinking in different ways and challenging everything all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, Ealing itself, it's a charitable trust. So what does that mean in practice in terms of running things day to day? How does it impact you?
Yeah, it's a curious charity. It was set up by a chap called Gerald Palmer, who was an MP. His family owned Huntley and Palmer biscuits, who were a big biscuit, the old sort of predecessor to McVitie's, I guess. And so that's where the sort of estate money, as it were, being crass, came from. And he settled the estate into a trust and wanted it to be kept for various different beneficiaries, one of which is the Eastern Orthodox Church, of all things,
right.
through his personal life. Also, he wanted public access maintained across the estate as far as possible, and wanted to look after the local pensioners, local communities, and all those sorts of things. So it's fascinating in so much as we're able to do a lot of things which a private owner wouldn't necessarily think to do. We can justify doing it. We're very fortunate. A lot of charities are very restricted in what they can do.
Yeah, because I think I'm right in thinking that the woodland and forestry, a lot of it is managed with public access specifically in mind.
Yeah, exactly that. We got about 1,100 acres, something like that. And for I think 20 or 30 years, we've allowed public access across all of the woodland, more or less free access, albeit some of it's tied up in the middle of farmland, so it's hard to get to, which lends itself to a lot of challenges, as well as you've seen with farmers with difficulties on footpaths and rubbish and all that sort of stuff. But actually, what it has shown is where you're actually giving access and you're actually working with people, generally people behave themselves and actually generally we don't really have much of a problem. People are grateful for it.
Yeah. For listeners in other parts of the country, what does your local landscape look like broadly?
We are surprisingly hilly, actually. I brought a friend from Yorkshire down when I was at college, and he was blown away by the fact there's actually hills here, which is not everywhere south of Birmingham was flat, I think. So we're sort of predominantly rolling chalkland. We have quite a lot of steepish valleys, but we go from sort of down on the riverbed up on sort of chalk downland. It's quite open and rolling.
Let's talk about you. What was your childhood like, and where did you grow up?
I grew up a bit further south, just off the edge of Salisbury, in fact, right on the edge of Salisbury Plain. Funny enough, grew up on a farm, or next door, physically on a farm, but not our farm, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is that on the Wiltshire side, or?
Yeah, on Wiltshire side, on the south side of Salisbury Plain, so just had tractors driving past the house, tanks driving past the house. So it was sort of
just a normal childhood, really.
Well, exactly, yeah. Did everything kids do. Went sort of poaching pheasants and fishing other people's fish and all those sorts of things, and quite good fun out in the countryside, really.
What about your time at school? Were you did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't that academic. Again, being Salisbury Plain, I was at school in a town called Warminster, which is a big army town.
Good maltings there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly that. We, most of my school friends were army kids. Some of them had come back from foreign countries where parents are on tour or whatever. So, friends sort of came and went a little bit. But I wasn't that academic. I wasn't that excited about school. Sort of average at most things. Never really particularly good at anything. But worked on a family friend's farm for years and years. Started off mowing the lawn and then went on to sort of keeping watch over the grain store and eventually sort of driving tractors and combines and things, which really got me into farming and the interest in farming, I think.
I was going to say, clearly that must have had a big impact in terms of where you eventually ended up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was really lucky, actually. We had I worked for the chap that owned the farm. Was a slightly peculiar mix. He was a petrochemical engineer by trade. He worked for BP and such like in Saudi Arabia. Made a lot of money. Then decided to train to be a priest.
Okay. Right.
So we sort of had these sort of slightly bizarre conversations in the farmhouse. But he was such a smart chap. I remember the first day on harvest once, I said, I hope you're praying for sunshine for the next few weeks. And he looked me deep in the eye and said, David, there's some things that God doesn't have control of. Sort of put me back in my box a bit. But so it's a sort of really curious mix of sort of science and religion at the coffee table on farm mornings. So it was sort of really good. And he taught me how to drive a tractor and all those sorts of things. And just, typical family farm where there's all sort of weird stuff going on and just good fun. So I really got the bug. Farming and got really involved with sort of nitty gritty.
Yeah, and then you ended up going to Harper to study land management. Did you ever consider doing pure ag, or were you fairly set on that?
Funnily enough, I went to Harper. I was a proper tractor nerd. One of these kids that sort of collected all the tractor brochures.
Yeah.
And I went to college really to look at agricultural engineering. That was what I was interested in, mechanization. But went and I think I've told the story before, but I went and it was just as foot and mouth hit when we went to visit, and I went to stay with some family up in Wales, and foot and mouth was really getting a grip, and just sort of thinking to myself, Jesus, do I really want to be involved with farming at the moment? This is a deeply unpleasant place to be. And actually, it was not great economically either, and so thought, well, maybe I need to do something sort of linked to it, but not really putting all my faith in farming, which in some ways I regret. I sort of sometimes think, well, maybe I would want to be a farmer or agricultural engineer or whatever, just play with machinery all day. But actually, it's a great role that I found. I just found the course because I'd been to Harper and looked at it and thought, well, that looks good, quite good fun as well. So did that, and I just really enjoyed it. I love the history of land management. I love the history of land ownership. I wouldn't say I necessarily agree with everything, but I enjoy it and I understand it, and it grabbed me. So that's kind of where I went down that road, and been in that role ever since.
Yeah, you spent a good length of time with Savills. Tell me about that time, some of the experiences you had, and what you learned from that time.
Yeah, Savills was good. I went on a placement here for Harper. You generally do a year out in industry halfway through. So I did mine with Savills. I think I was about third on the list of people. They chose people for me who turned it down, so they got lumbered with me. But anyway, so I did it. Really enjoyed my year. I started off buying and selling farms, but found that a little bit monotonous. Just sort of process really. But then went into estate management, looking after estates, and it really did teach me the commercial side of land management. As you can imagine, it's sort of fairly cutthroat having to be in big corporate environments. So I went back there after I graduated. Funny enough, went down to Cornwall for about 6 months to fill in for someone. So did that, came back up to Salisbury, and just carried on managing estates for a while, which is good. Then I slightly evolved and went into a department called Country House Consultancy, which was run by a chap called Philip Edel, who really nice chap. Everyone thought was slightly bonkers because he was basically managing houses for the sort of new money, as it were. Where there's sort of big houses and people don't really know how to look after it. So this is sort of billionaire territory. And it was a fascinating change in so much as you really saw what you could achieve when money wasn't an object. When you didn't need to worry about when you're getting finance from and all those sorts of things. You can just say you want something and someone can come up with an idea. So it was a huge eye-opener really to see actually how you can do, not to be grotesque about it, but actually when you don't need to worry about whether something's viable or whether something is worth doing.
Are you able to use any examples? In a general way?
Yeah, I think I think there was a lot of people who would just come in. One client built a chapel in his back garden.
Wow.
Because he wanted to, and had a museum as well for his business. So it's just because they want to, and it's great. And it's sometimes it's for business, sometimes it's because they want to, sometimes it's because they want a bolt hole in the UK. It just shows you a different way of thinking, that actually money doesn't necessarily need to be the first thing that crops up. Sort of stops you doing things.
And then more recently, as we were saying at the beginning, you took the decision to become a private estate manager. Why did you make that choice?
I think I got to the point where I was slightly struggling with the corporate world, particularly with Savills. As I really got on with the people there, loved the firm, but I think I found that I was sort of working for the firm rather than the client more, and decided I wanted to be on the ground. I wanted to be making a bigger difference there. I didn't really want to be worrying about whether I was going to meet my targets or whatever. And I hate timesheets as well. Having to account for what I've done in my day has always been tricky. So it was just, I wanted to get back on the ground and work for people directly. That's what I enjoy, and that's what I've done since. And I think I'm glad I made that move.
Brilliant. I want to talk about the online ag show, which we have to with having you on, really. where did the idea come from, and how did you make it happen?
Um, the idea sort of sprung out of thin air, really. I kind of, more or less a year ago, wasn't it, that we started
Yeah, must have
heading
been.
into lockdown. Um, I can't remember if we'd just gone into lockdown or we're just going into
I
lockdown.
think I think based on my MOT, which was today, I remember having this conversation with the guy who was doing it this time last year. I think we were just about to go into it.
Yeah, I think that's about right. And shows were starting to be cancelled. I can't remember which order they happened in, but the sort of the Royal Highland was cancelled, and the
Yeah.
Royal Welsh was cancelled, and our local show, Newbury Show, was cancelled,
Hmm.
which is a show going bang on the edge of this. In fact, used to be part of the estate at one point. And I drove past the showground in the morning and was just gutted at the fact that this show wasn't going to happen. It was the thing you look forward to, having a pint with your mates after harvest. Newbury shows in sort of mid-September, so it was always, yeah, let's finish harvest by then and have the show off. And so it's just really sad, wasn't it? I think everyone was just feeling down in the dumps that their sort of liberties were taken away, and not being able to go out, and so I sort of slightly jokingly put on Twitter, as you do, well, why don't we try and do something online? And I thought, well, so people can send in photos of their sheep or their dog or whatever, and we can judge it. And we get some people to talk about farming and stuff, so that'll all be fun. Quite cheap, easy to do. We can rack it up, and people join in. Anyway, people just got really. Everyone else ran away with it. It was everyone else's fault rather than mine. And there was just everyone saying, "Oh, can we have a beer tent and can we have a cake competition?" And
I said there was a good beer as well. It was very good beer. Yeah.
The story behind that was for you another
Okay.
time. But I mean, Charlotte Smith from Farming Today came on and asked if there's a cake competition. I said, yeah, sure, as long as you judge it. And she did, to be fair. So there's just so much interest. And I thought, well, maybe we could do something with it. And it just grew and grew and grew, really. So it went from sort of doing something on Twitter to having its own website. And then Andrew Lazenby, Innovation for Agriculture, and Ray's gave me a call and said, I think you might be onto something here. We'd really like to get behind it. But I think you're massively underestimating what it all involves. So long story short, they sponsored the website and sponsored the team to kind of build all of that and manage it.
Fantastic.
Which would have flopped. If we'd have done it ourselves, it would have just crashed in seconds. So it kind of just built slightly organically. But there was nobody. I mean, we were winging it from day one. But it sort of just about came together in the end.
Oh, it was honestly, it was a genuine highlight for a lot of people. It meant a huge amount, and it did have. It was very cleverly put together. That I mean, like the beer tent, as you said. But the big question on most listeners, in most listeners' minds right now, will be: is the online ag show happening this year? Do you reckon?
I don't know. We've been chatting amongst ourselves. I think. I mean, someone asked me. I can't remember who it was. Someone asked me, would I do it again? The day after the show, and I said, not a chance in hell. An innovation,
which is the kind of self that you should always listen to. Your initial reaction.
Exactly. And Innovation for Agriculture said, would you be interested in doing it? I said, no, I don't want anything to do with it. Just take it. So yeah, I mean, it was always planned to be a 1 year thing. Well, it wasn't really planned to be anything, but it was planned to be a 1 year thing because shows were going to be cancelled. So we just wanted to keep that thought about shows alive. We didn't want to replace anything. We didn't want to try and make up for the fact they weren't there. We just wanted to keep people interested in it, and I think we achieved that. And back in May or June or whenever it was, we never dreamt that we were going to be sitting here in a year's time and still in the position we're in. So sorry, I'm answering your question like a politician, I appreciate, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So, we just didn't think that we were going to be in this position. So we hadn't thought and planned to do anything more. we did a harvest festival thing, which you probably saw in the autumn, which is good. I think it was cheap and easy. It wasn't as well attended, and I think what we've got to the point now is that people are slightly bored of online things. So we've been sort of chatting to Innovation for Agriculture about what we do with it next. And I think we sort of slightly came to the conclusion that, would people be interested still in doing that again? Was it a one-hit wonder that it was so new, so different that people did it? And the progression of technology as well since then. As you say, the beer tent that we did was always intended to be a sort of central thing where you can have a beer and you can actually chat to people and have a disco. That was pretty new and good.
Yeah.
But then since then there's developed platforms like Oxford Farming Conference used, which is really interactive and you can really chat to people face to face. It's brilliant. So the tech has moved on massively even in a year, or certainly become more available. And so that, coupled with the fact come May or June, I think people are going to be starting to be released from lockdown. I think people are just going to be wanting to run as far away from home as possible. Yeah. So I think we sort of come to the conclusion, and that combined with, as you touched on earlier, I mean, my mum very sadly has been diagnosed with motor neuron disease, which is taking a lot of my attention, and having to focus on family stuff. So I think we sort of slightly reached the point that maybe actually we'll give it a miss for this year and see where we go for next year.
Yeah, you mentioned your local show. Is it happening this year? Mine's been cancelled.
No, ours has been cancelled, unfortunately, and I know a lot of have. I think a lot of the bigger ones have because of the overheads and need to plan so far ahead. But actually, it's a great opportunity for the smaller shows really to shine. They're really good fun. Everyone goes to their big shows, but the small ones are just sort of proper, sort of rough and ready and good fun. If you haven't got a show where you come out of the place with cow shit on your feet, you haven't done very well. So yeah, I mean, just encourage everyone to go along to the local shows and spend a few quid. They need it this year.
Yeah, you're a pretty keen photographer. What is it about photography that you enjoy?
It stops me having my own photo taken. I hate having my photo.
Sensible man. Be on the right side of the camera.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you're in control of the camera. I got into photography, and funnily enough, when I left Savills, I had one management client and set up a photography business doing weddings and events and bits and bobs like that, which is quite good fun. But time just took over. But I just find you can go and look at stuff, and you can stick the camera in people's faces, and actually, it somehow makes you a bit more brave. In a weird sort of a way. It sort of almost gives, it's a bit like that sort of wearing a uniform thing. You can sort of go and explore and be nosy. I'm fairly creative, I think, and so I like looking at images that have been made to be attractive. So yeah, it's just the fun for me, and I'm actually glad. I think that I didn't really pursue it as a business thing, because I enjoy it as a sideline and a personal thing.
We're now going to move on to the part of the show where we talk about the wider industry, and going to start with industry challenges. I asked you for a couple of these. The first you suggested is finding our niche in the UK. What do you mean by that?
The UK has always been influenced so much by global markets. Someone will say, "Oh, well, it must be a good harvest year because prices will be high because there isn't, I don't know, it's rained and so the wheat prices are down." Well, it doesn't. It prices are high when the USA has a massive drought or whatever. So we have no control over our own destiny in the markets here, and I think we've just got an opportunity. We've got a challenge, but also an opportunity to really find our local markets. And I think whatever your views on Brexit or whatever, and the removal of BPS, I think we've just got an opportunity to say, okay, well, what's our local market? How do we market directly to our people? People are becoming a little bit patriotic, and are interested in what's going on. So I think the market is not necessarily competing against the USA or Australia or Russia or Eastern Europe now. I think it's more about selling to our own people and trying to attract a premium. You know, we don't compete very well. I know I'll be kicked under the table for that, but we don't compete very well in the commodity market. You know, we're just too small, like it or not. We produce very, very good quality stuff, and we produce it well, particularly meat and fresh produce. You know, we produce that very well, but we need to be better at marketing it and finding little niche markets rather than trying to sort of flog it against people who are producing it in vast quantities all around the world.
And the other thing you mentioned relates to environmental practice and the environmental debate that's currently going on. I'm interested in your view on payments for public goods from an estate management point of view, perhaps particularly when it comes to medium and larger scale estates.
Funnily enough, I think this is something we've always been quite good at as estates, certainly as proper country estates. I think I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. You know, we already do things like pay to keep the local village hall up together, or to mow the verges, or to whatever it is, maintain the playing field. You know, we're doing so much of that stuff already, or opening woods for public access like we do. You know, we're not alone, and there's a lot of private owners that do that. It's not just us. You know, we're not sort of virtue signaling here. Local estates do it, but they just don't sing about it. It's just stuff that happens. You know, I know that quite a lot of local estates to us, you know, run the village shop, and it makes a stonking loss every year, or run the pub and it does likewise. You know, that just doesn't happen in the commercial world. You know, left to their own devices, these places would have shut down a long time ago. So we do a lot of that stuff anyway. What we need to do is to be better at showing what we do and how we do it. In some ways it's talking about what we do and blowing our own trumpet a bit, but actually we don't necessarily need to. I think we can just inform a bit. So I think the sort of principles of public goods public money for public goods is there and has been around for years. We've just never really realized it. And I think if we sort of work on that basis and say, okay, well, actually we're doing this stuff anyway, we can do it environmentally, and be paid for it. That's perfect, isn't it? You know, it seems like a no-brainer. So I think there's a good opportunity for estates, particularly because they've got a lot of those sort of rough edges. And you know, estates, unlike farms, can often be slightly less productive. You know, if you own a farm, generally you're having to sort of squeeze crops out of it, whereas estates just have those little bits that sort of fall between people's land, and nobody quite knows what to do with it. So I think if you're managing land on a big scale, you tend to have a lot of these areas. I think estates are quite good at that, and don't necessarily get the credit for it.
Interesting. And on the flip side as well of pretty much the same issue, but what does the future of medium and large scale estates look like at a time of reduced basic payment?
It's tricky. Fun enough, we as an estate, we've got, I don't know, 5,000 acres, big chunk of woodland and 100 odd cottages. Funnily enough, the farmland isn't the area I'm worried about at the moment. We're in a world where we're trying to work in ever tighter residential lettings scenarios. As you know, the markets for commercial property is a bit all over the place at the moment. So there's challenges in every department. We, I think, have known for a long time that farmland's going to be hit by this big change. To some extent, we've accepted it. We accept that we will lose a bit of rent. We accept that we have to share the burden with the farmers. But actually, what I see is a lot of opportunity to embrace new challenges and be better at what we do. You know, why are we still driving over a field 5 times to plant a crop, you know, when we can do it in one pass? You know, all those sorts of things, because we could afford to in the past, and because we had a big check and could afford a big bit of kit. So I think it's going to focus a lot of people's minds. But on an estate scale, I think there's opportunity, but we've just got to expect to share the burden a little bit.
Okay. And looking at the next 10 years, let's say with a positive point of view, what are you most looking forward to? And that could be professionally or personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite a positive person anyway. I think I tend to try and look for solutions rather than problems. I think I really do see a world where you walk onto a farm and it's singing with wildlife. I think particularly if we can sort of find that niche market for our product, as I was mentioning earlier, it's out there. And I think if we're being paid to, I mean, frankly, if it pays more money to grow rough grass and let barn owls swoop across it, well, why wouldn't you? Farmers are business people ultimately, and they've got to do what's right for them. I think perhaps farmers are quite reluctant to let go of farming. Sometimes, they've always done things a certain way, but I think there's a lot of positivity, and I think a lot of engagement to be had with the public and with our sort of conservation neighbours and all that sort of stuff. And we can farm in a sensitive way, make a bit of money, and actually enjoy where we live.
We always finish the show with the same two questions. The first is, if you had a message for the public, any message, what would it be?
I think my overriding message to the public would be to care about where your food comes from, to care about what you're looking at out of the window of your car as you drive around, and to care what you're walking over when you go for a walk in the countryside. Look at what's growing in a field. Look at what you're trampling on, what you're digging up to make bike jumps or whatever it is. And I think it's really just to care what's there and actually value the countryside and value what you're putting into your body in form of food and all those sorts of things. And I think it will do a bit of good for everyone.
Yeah, good one. And finally, a message to farmers.
I think try and listen. Try and be on receive rather than transmit. You walk into, and it's not just farmers, but we're in farming. You walk into a room of farmers and mention the words rewilding or veganism or whatever, and we shouted out the room. but actually we need to listen. We need to listen to what people want, and we need to listen to other ways of doing things, whether it be from the public, our consumers, or our neighbours. We can all learn. We're in such a divisive world at the moment. Any subject, you have to be on one side of the fence or the other. You're not allowed to take a middle ground anymore. But we've got to learn to do that. We've got to learn to listen to other people's views, respect them as well.
Yeah. Well, David, we'll leave it there. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really good to have your perspective, and actually really good to have your perspective from an estate's point of view, which we don't often, rarely profile on the show. So no, thank you very, very much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.